of Lenovsy to discuss the preservation of the Lenovsy Cemetery. After meeting at the mayor's office, we went to the cemetery and discussed preserving it, along with the mayor in the middle, the architect on his right, and Vladimir, our missionary person, and the contractor standing foreground on the right.
Саме як з вами найліпше спілкуватися? Яким чином? Що ви? Телефон чи факс є?
У мене є факс кабінеті 2117 міської ради.
Можна буде записати, чи ви маєте Хорошо. One second. Він ще хотів запитати за ту справу. Його просто цікаво, він от шукав у це.
I was able to meet briefly with Grayberg Basiak, who's writing a history of Lenovsy. He's been very helpful to us on our previous 2 visits there. We then returned to Chernobyl for the evening and then back to Lenovsy the next morning. We went and visited the marketplace, which began to be busy in the morning. And this was a place where my father lived here, that he actually sold his horses and cattle that he had raised for market. We walked from the market to the old Jewish cemetery, which only has these brief remnants that you see here of stones. It is now several houses and a potato field. We encountered this woman who told us that when the Soviet era was here, that the Soviets had given this old Jewish cemetery to her mother. This cemetery probably dated back to the late 1600s, and underneath here are probably hundreds of burials. Then we continued walking back toward the marketplace, and we walked past a house last year where Catherine and I and Alex had interviewed a woman who still remembers her Yiddish and still speaks it quite well. That's her husband sitting on her left. And drove by the restaurant that we had 2 of our lunches at. And we went past the area where there's a recreation area and an 8-unit hostel over here on the left. And then next to the river and lake where my father's brother Moishe drowned in 1908. Then we continue on up toward the old section of Lenovsy where the old Jewish Community Center was and was being used in 1941-42 for Gestapo headquarters. And now we're going to be looking at the area where the killing ghetto was built in 1941 and where about 1,900 Jews were confined, about 600 to 700 of them from Lanovitz, and the rest of them mainly from Ketterberg and from Belozerka. All of the Ketterberg Jews were not killed here, but some of them were in Ketterberg. These 2 houses are remaining Jewish stone houses from before the war, and were much larger and in better shape, and the Soviets left them there. This is the monument built by Jews who returned to Lenovitzy from Israel. and they built this monument in 1964-1965 with the permission of the Village Soviet. This monument was built in 1999 by the local Christian missionary who created a forgiveness ceremony at that time. And the monument says underneath it in Ukrainian, "From the citizens of Lenovsy to the victims of the Nazis." Children play on the mass gravesite, and there's a woman across the street who sometimes shoos them away, at least the 3 times that we've been there. And I was really struck by this mother goose and her goslings, and I got a good feeling about it, that their presence on the mass gravesite was a good thing. I brought my bar mitzvah tallis because I wanted to say Kaddish for those who are buried here. The grave in the background is of Ita Neminovich, who died in 1981 and was the last Jew in Lenovitz and chose to be buried in the mass gravesite. On our way out of Lenovsy, we passed the flour mill. A number of the Lenovsy descendants that I've communicated with on the internet and by phone mentioned their families mentioning the flour mill and their connection with the flour mill. And so Michael and I end our visit to Lenovsy, and the 3 of us, Alex and Michael and I, start on our way back to Lviv.